Hello, my name is Dr. John Shepard, and I'll be teaching a 4-week short course on artificial intelligence in society this fall. To tell you a bit about myself, I'm a professor of computer science at Montana State University, and my research involves developing and applying several different artificial intelligence methods to problems ranging from prostate cancer diagnosis to aircraft diagnosis, and from helping farmers make profitable management decisions to adding smarts into sensors to help better understand our environment. This fall, I hope to take you on a journey into the expanding world of artificial intelligence. Artificial intelligence, or AI, is a term that's being thrown around a lot these days. And I've found that many people don't really understand just what AI really is or what it can and cannot do. We'll start our journey by trying to define what AI is. We'll spend some time looking at how the field started and what has developed over the past 75 years. This hopefully will help us to better frame our conversation and to put things into context. There's a lot of excitement as well as a lot of anxiety about what is going on here, and my goal is to help temper both. So from there, we'll start to consider what we can do today by looking at some of the different techniques being used. Next, we'll spend some time talking about some specific applications. I'll share with you more detail about the applications I've worked on, but we'll also consider some of the applications you most likely have encountered in your lives. AI has become pervasive, so I'm fairly confident we'll be able to find common experiences to discuss here. This will move us into our next conversation, where we consider the societal and ethical impacts, both positive and negative, that AI introduces into our lives. To do this, though, we'll need to spend a bit of time in the nitty-gritty to demystify how AI works. It seems that much of the mystery is around a pretty important subset of AI called machine learning, and we'll spend time specifically demystifying that as well. Then we'll consider how the different limitations of these methods help us to better understand the associated societal impacts. Finally, we're going to talk philosophy. What does AI really mean in terms of some of the philosophical questions, such as, what is intelligence? Or, what is the mind? Or, what is consciousness? At the heart of these questions, we'll face head-on the possibilities of whether it's even possible to build a system with true intelligence, whatever that means. Some have suggested that the day will come when biology will merge with technology, creating a singularity. What does that mean? What might that look like? So that's what we have in store for you this fall. I hope you'll join me on this journey into understanding the amazing world of artificial intelligence, and that you'll share in the conversation. I hope to see you soon.
Hello, Olli members. My name is Ася Pereltsvai, and I will be your instructor for the cultural history of Russia. In this class, we'll run through over a millennium of Russian history, but instead of the usual kings and battles and all the usual things, we will focus on ideas, memes, as young people now would say, ideas that drove Russian history. We'll look at how religion shaped Russia as it is, patriarchal form of government, even the geographical position of Russia that straddles Europe and Asia and seems to be continuously torn between a more European way of development and more of its own or Asiatic way of development. We'll look at how these ideas developed over centuries and how they shaped Russia such as it is today. We'll see that some of the very old ideas that formed in the Middle Ages still drive Russia and make Russians think a certain way, that makes Russia behave a certain way in the global arena. So hopefully you'll gain a much better understanding of international politics today, and particularly of Russia, which is one of the largest international players in politics and in economy. So this will be a very interesting 6-week course. I hope to see you in class, and all the best. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Susan Dana, and I'll be teaching an 8-hour course called Free Speech Law, Where We've Been and Where We're Going. I am really excited to share with you my passion for this subject, not because I know all the answers, I certainly don't, but because it's so important to understanding our values as a nation, and because the stakes for us going forward are so very high. A little bit of background about me. I have a law degree from Stanford Law School, where I took as many constitutional law courses as I could. I just recently retired last December from MSU after 25 years at the College of Business as both a faculty member and an administrator. In the last 2 years at MSU, I created and taught an honors college seminar on the First Amendment and free speech, which has been probably the most fun I've ever had in the classroom. And I'm delighted to get to share the topic with you. My goal for our 4 short weeks together is to just give you a sense of how the US Supreme Court has interpreted the free speech clause of the First Amendment over the past 100 years. The first US Supreme Court decision on the First Amendment didn't occur until 1919, and we'll talk about why that was. But a lot has changed over the last 100 years, including Supreme Court jurisprudence on the First Amendment. So we'll talk about where we've been, how we got to where we are right now on the First Amendment, and what that might mean for the future of free speech in our country. Some of what we talk about may surprise you. Some of it might delight you. Some of it might anger you. And I'm certainly not going to try to persuade you that there's a particularly important, or that there's one particular way to think about free speech. But I do want to expose you to why there's so much disagreement about free speech, even now after 100 years of interpretation of the First Amendment, so that you can think critically about the issue, and so that you can develop or adjust or not your own personal beliefs around free speech in our democratic system. We can't possibly cover all of the free speech topics out there, so I have selected a few as perhaps the most compelling and relevant topics for us today. So these include subversive speech and incitement to violence, freedom of the press and national security. Some of you may remember the Pentagon Papers case, so we'll talk about that. Protection of falsehoods and so-called fake news, offensive speech, including threats, infliction of emotional distress, and hate speech. Then we will finish up with free speech and social media, which is, of course, particularly important as we live in an age in which Facebook can actually ban a former president for 2 years, which is quite an extraordinary event in the history of free speech. If we have time, we may be able also to talk about campaign finance regulation. We will not be talking about the religion clause of the First Amendment. We'll have our hands full just talking about the free speech clause of the First Amendment. I definitely hope that we can have some really good discussion. We will be on Zoom, but we're all now very familiar with the chat function, so hopefully we can use that well. But I also plan to set a lot of time for Q&A and discussion on these topics. So I think it should be a fun and relevant class, and I hope you'll join us.
I'm Dr. Andrea Hamry, and I'm thrilled to have the opportunity to teach transportation policy and planning with a focus on strategies to improve sustainable and equitable outcomes for the Osher Lifelong Learning Institute at Montana State University this fall. I'm a research associate in the Mobility and Public Transportation program at the Western Transportation Institute, which is part of Montana State University and a USDOT designated University Transportation Center. A little bit about me. I'm originally from the Twin Cities in Minnesota. Between high school and college, I lived in Thun, Switzerland as a Rotary Youth Exchange student. I attended Middlebury College and earned my BA in Environmental Studies. And then I lived in the Washington, D.C. region for almost 15 years. Much of that time was spent in Northern Virginia, where I attended graduate school and earned my master's in applied economics and PhD in planning. I'm thrilled to now call Bozeman home and to be a researcher at Montana State University. Throughout my life, I've really been a multimodal traveler, have enjoyed different forms of ride-hailing and public transportation, walking in our communities, biking, and I've lived in rural, suburban, and urban settings. And so I think this has really helped me maintain a curiosity and an open line of inquiry about what transportation looks and feels like in a variety of communities. The goals of this course will be to gain a better understanding of transportation policy, planning, and funding, to familiarize with key trends in travel behavior, to appreciate the multifaceted societal impacts of transportation, to learn about various transportation modes in relation to critical issues, and to learn about successful examples of citizen advocacy to influence transportation policy, planning, and funding. So really my goal is that by the end of the course, you feel informed and empowered to contribute meaningfully to discussions and deliberations about transportation policy and planning in your own life. In terms of course structure, prior to the class, I'll always try and provide a variety of optional readings, podcasts, and webinars related to what we'll be talking about. During class, I'll provide an overview of key concepts based on key source material, and then bring in some really interesting discussion items from local, state, and national news around transportation policies, data, and other interesting examples. And then after class, my goal is to set up some kind of forum like a blog for us to optionally engage in further discussion and reflection. So, questions that might come up during class and that you might ponder: why do Americans drive so much? How much space should be given to car parking? How much should we really be spending on public transportation? Why are pedestrian fatalities increasing? And where should bicyclists be expected to ride? In terms of the course structure, I'll just give a brief overview here. In the first class, we'll be touching on key concepts like mobility, accessibility, and livability. In the second class, we'll be touching on drivers and automobiles and what it really kind of means to plan our communities around driving. In the third class, we'll look at being a public transportation rider. In the fourth class, we'll focus on the pedestrian experience and walking in our communities. In the fifth class, we'll focus on cyclists and the bicycling experience. And in the sixth and final class, we'll look at the sharing economy and what the future of transportation might look like. I look forward to the possibility of seeing you in class. Thanks very much.
Hello, my name is Stephen Maley. It'll be my privilege to lead an innovative interdisciplinary course this October called Global Civics. There's a lot of interest these days in restoring civics education to the place it once held in K-12 and higher education. The decline of civics in recent decades has been blamed for the partisanship and political rancor that is undermining public trust in our democratic institutions. I heartily agree that civics needs to be restored to the curriculum, but I also believe it must be updated and expanded to be relevant to 21st century realities. Understanding the core principles and institutions of American government is an essential component of civic life, but it is vitally important as well to acknowledge duties beyond borders that are consistent with the rights and responsibilities here at home. The Global Civics course will delve into several interrelated subjects, including history, economics, geography, and international law. There won't be any deep dives, but the material will be pithy nonetheless. I'll use a series of PowerPoint presentations to illustrate concepts such as sovereignty and legitimacy, as well as examples of various trends in governance. The aim is to provide as comprehensive an outlook as possible in the relatively brief amount of time available. I have developed a particular point of view that I am eager to share. It is not novel or unique, but it is unconventional, and I hope you'll find it both refreshing and engaging. I do expect to be challenged. Here's the course summary in a nutshell. We are all citizens of our local and state community, our country, and the world. As such, we have an obligation to ourselves and to others to know and understand how the global economy functions, how local, regional, and planetary ecologies interact, how the media shapes opinion, where countries are located and why location matters, how cultures are differentiated, and how things have come to be the way they are, for good and ill, as a consequence of ideologies, social evolution, and technological innovation. Here's some additional bullet points. History repeats itself, sort of. In other words, globalization is a recurring phenomenon, even if the pace, scale, and consequences of increasing interdependence changes. Geography shapes destiny. Politics and economics are inseparable. Religion is always relevant. Upholding the rule of law requires unceasing vigilance, courage, and creativity. Other countries' elections matter. Media literacy is crucial to a thoughtful understanding of the world. Global threats and challenges require global responses and governance. Engagement as citizens trumps victimization. We need to craft and adopt better measures of well-being. For example, gross domestic product just doesn't cut it anymore. And finally, and perhaps most controversially, universal human rights are the end game of civilization. This is my first opportunity to offer a course through the Osher Lifelong Learning Institute Wanderlust program. Perhaps you can tell that already. Realizing that participants on this occasion will be experienced, highly educated, and in many cases well-traveled adults, not impressionable youth, I look forward to leading spirited conversations after offering a sort of guided tour of trends and events worldwide that have direct impact on our lives as citizens of Montana, the United States, and the world. I will offer commentary on why it's important to ramp up civics education and civic engagement, but I promise not to lecture my peers on how to be a good global citizen. I look forward to seeing you in October.
Where have all the flowers gone? Long time passing. Where have all the flowers gone? Long time ago. Where have all the flowers gone? Young girls have picked them, every one. When will they ever learn? When will they ever learn? Hi, everybody. Mike Beeler and I are going to teach a class together about Bob Dylan, his words and his music. I'm going to do the music part, and Mike is going to talk about the lyrics as poetry. We hope you can join us. It'll be comprehensive, and it'll seek to explain how the simplicity of his songs and the complexity of his words braided together had such a huge impact on the world and on American culture. Hope you can join us.
Hello,
My name is Bruce Gorley, and this fall, I am teaching an Olli course on Christian nationalism, a powerful but little understood movement that is dramatically reshaping religion, politics, and American identity. What is Christian nationalism and why is it so prominent and powerful? How did the movement begin? Why was Christian nationalism front and center in the January 6th Capitol insurrection? How is Christian nationalism shaping religion, politics, and American identity? These are among the most important questions of our hour. Questions that tens of millions of Americans are wrestling with. Questions that are foundational to the future of our communities and to our nation. My course this fall on Christian nationalism will help you recognize the language, themes, and values system of the movement, understand the history, context, and ideology of a movement opposed to freedom for all, human equality, and democracy. Understand the central role of Christian nationalism in the January 6th Capitol insurrection, and formulate responses to a movement that will persist into the foreseeable future. In short, this timely course, taking place November and December this fall, will help you better understand a little known but critically important part of the American story that is dramatically impacting the times in which you and I live.
Authors, Humor, and the English Language. I am Joanne Salisbury Drexel, and I will be teaching this class this fall, late fall. Brevity is the soul of wit, so says Polonius in Act 2 of Hamlet. And then he proceeds to expound at great length on why this is so, ending finally with his message, Hamlet is mad. Shakespeare shows here how irony is also the soul of wit, getting the opposite of what you expect. You know, brevity and then to go on and on and on. And how often we do things like that, where we parallel an irony to what we mean with something that's just the opposite. Hopefully, we can laugh at ourselves. We really need to do that. I am really looking forward to teaching this class on American humor and the English language. These are dark, hard times, and it's always important to remember we still have a sense of humor, a sense of the absurd. That tale spins us into laughter, sometimes hopefully at ourselves. We admire wit because it is based on a clever use of words and has an enduring quality through time. Social satire is an important use of humor that lets us see the absurd juxtaposition of ideas that surprises us into laughter and understanding, such as Ambrose Bierce when he defines in the Devil's Dictionary a saint, a dead sinner revised and edited. Or Dorothy Parker on hearing that an acquaintance has died who quipped, "How could you tell?" Or Twain, who said, "Familiarity breeds contempt," and children. How about George Carlin, who said, "Atheism is a non-profit organization." I love that. So wonderful. The biggest challenge in a class about American humor in the English language would be how to choose from a list that includes Mark Twain, Robert Benchley, James Thurber, Georges Kaufman, Art Buchwald, Max Schulman, Garrison Keeler, Dorothy Parker, David Sedaris, Ambrose Spears, Benet Cerf, and so on and so on. It'll be fun trying. Finally, Victor Borge, the great musical humorist, avows that there is more logic in humor than anything else, because you see, humor is truth. I'm hoping in this class, at the end of each session, that you, the audience, will come up with some of those real jewels of humor to entertain us all and show us that the language, that our mother tongue, is so deft and so apt at showing us the ironies and the metaphors of humor. Thanks.
Hi there. My name is James Thule, and I am the Special Collections Librarian and Associate Professor here at Montana State University, Bozeman. And, excuse me, I will be teaching this coming fall semester trout, salmon, and angling around the world, reading, collecting, sharing, and learning about all things fishing. The description of the course sums it up well. So Montana State University is on its way to becoming the world's largest and most comprehensive research center on all things related to trout and salmonids. We call it in-house kind of the 6 degrees of trout and salmon, so anything that relates back to those species, we will collect material on. The library is home to a vast collection of print, archival, and electronic works on these species. And we'll visit the collection, we'll take a tour, let you guys hold some really cool old books in your hand, including a book that we have that is signed by none other than Isaac Walton, the author of The Complete Angler. We'll look at the collection, and the collections, our archival collections, including the papers of folks like Bud Lilly and John Garak and Ed Engel and A.K. Best and a bunch of other prominent angling authors, enthusiasts, scientists, people who have had impacts on keeping the fishing good here in Montana and across the world, and scientists, authors, poets, you name it. And we'll also look at things like our All Our History project, where we have collected the stories of anglers from over 300 folks from around the world, over 70 nations, every continent except Antarctica. We've collected the tales of fishing, how it's changed, the impacts that they've seen, what got them started, why they love it, all those kind of things. It's an incredible primary source document, and it exists and was created right here at MSU, and we'll talk a lot about that. We'll talk about angling in relation to art and literature and history and just a lot of stuff about fishing. So it should be pretty cool. It should be an interesting class. I think we'll have some great discussions. We'll read a few articles, probably at least one book, or at least sections of a book or two. Nothing too in depth, just kind of things that will be good precursors for our discussions. A little bit about me. I am an avid angler. I've caught 6 fish on 6 continents. My one claim to fame is that the Mekong giant catfish I caught in Thailand was bigger than the one Jeremy Wade caught. Jeremy Wade was the host of the television program River Monsters, and I have been lucky enough to fish with Jeremy. So one of the other cool things that I've been able to do because of my work with this collection. So if you have any questions for me about the class, please feel free to reach out. I'll request that they share my contact information with you. Again, this will be for anglers. It'll be for people who like fishing. It'll be for people who just respect our water and realize that the old adage of water is life is absolutely true. And by protecting our fisheries, we protect our water and we preserve what is essential to every living creature on this planet. So I hope you're interested in taking the class. I hope to get to know you more and share some of my fishing stories with you and hear some of yours. And I hope you enjoy your day, and we will chat soon if possible. Take care.
Mahamitakiapi. Ayuha chante oaste napechu zapito. Hello, my relatives. I greet all of you with a heartfelt handshake. My name is Mike Jetty, a member of the Spirit Lake Dakota Nation. Currently work at the Montana Office of Public Instruction with Indian Education for All, and I'm happy to share a little bit of information about the Indigenous Leaders Series, Native Trailblazers in the 21st Century. It's a 4-part online speaker series, and we're going to highlight some powerful Indian women. My co-host will be Stephen Morissette. He's from the Rocky Boys Reservation, Chippewa Cree, and he also works with Indian Education for All here at the Office of Public Instruction. The idea for this series came as a result of conversations with Linda Clark and Beth Madden, and so I'd like to give them a shout out for coming up with the idea. And so I'll share a little bit of information about each of these young Indigenous leaders. The first person we'll be interviewing is Jennifer Show. She is a Assiniboine from Fort Belknap, Montana. Jennifer has some great connections with Montana State University. I first met her there back in 1998 when she was a high school student, but then she went on to receive a bachelor's degree there, and then also her doctorate in nursing practice. So she works up at Fort Belknap with health issues and does a lot to keep folks healthy in that community. And so I look forward to visiting with Jennifer. The next person we'll be talking to is Jordan Langford Forster. She's Ani and Anishinaabe. Jordan currently works in Great Falls Public Schools with dropout prevention programs for Native American students. And Jordan has been involved with our office for quite a while, working on Indian Education for All professional development. And she does a lot to educate teachers about ways they can integrate Indian Ed for All in meaningful and respectful ways in their classrooms. So look forward to visiting with Jordan. And then we'll also be visiting with Cinnamon Kills first. She's Northern Cheyenne and Oglala Lakota, and she's done a wide range of things in her life so far. She's an artist, a writer, a filmmaker, an educator, and she advocates for Indigenous peoples. And so also look forward to hearing what Cinnamon's been up to, and I'm sure she'll serve as an inspiration not only for you but for all Montanans. And then finally, we'll be visiting with Mariah Gladstone, who's Blackfeet and Cherokee. And Mariah, she's set up her own Indigenous cooking channel called Indigi Kitchen, and she's been involved with food sovereignty efforts for the tribes. And but she's not only involved with food sovereignty, but she works with lots of different programs on contemporary and historic American Indian issues. And so all these young ladies were featured on a poster series called Making Montana Proud. It was an idea that Stephen Morissette came up with, and we try and promote as many good young American Indian role models as we can out there. Like I said before, not only to serve as an inspiration to Native people, but to all Montanans. And so I hope you sign up for the class. We all need a little inspiration in our lives, and it's nice to hear some good news from Indian country. So please sign up for the course. I think you'll find it educational. Thanks, and have a good rest of your day.
Hi, my name is Bruce Maxwell, and I'm an agroecologist at MSU, and I'm going to head up teaching a course on switching from cattle to bison. This is primarily a switch due to climate change projections and how we think the ecosystems of the northern Great Plains are likely to change. And when I say northern Great Plains, I'm really including the valleys as well that are in central Montana. So this course is about thinking through that process and really discussing it with students. And so we'll visit a couple of different bison operations to see how bison are currently being managed in different ways, and we'll talk about how we might make those kinds of changes in our system. Helen Auger Carlson is a great friend and is working at the Blackfeet Community College and is working hard to bring along students into agriculture, and is a wonderful person to give an introductory lecture about what it means to have bison, what it means to food sovereignty and to nutritional quality, etc., of this bison-based sort of food system. So she'll talk about that. And then also joining me will be Fred Provenza, who is a professor emeritus of behavioral ecology and Department of Wildland Resources at Utah State University, and now lives in Ennis as he's retired. Great person to talk about how animals can teach us and how animals naturally sort of select foods, and how the connections occur between soils and then human health, all the way through the plants the animals eat and then the animals that we eat. So with that background, we'll talk with a little more background, perhaps I should say. Uncertainty in agriculture due to changing climate, economics, and societal food preferences will likely result in this shift from cattle to bison. So we're going to kind of make this hypothesis as we go through this presentation of this course. We'll talk a lot about the bison management and how it might be best accomplished through a mix of indigenous knowledge and modern technologies, where indigenous knowledge allows for animals to teach us, and at the same time how we might mix modern technologies with that to address the changes that are coming along at us. Why Ini or bison? Ini is the Blackfoot word for bison. Clearly, these animals do better under hot, dry conditions than most cattle breeds that we're raising and seem increasingly interested in raising in the northern Great Plains. They calve themselves, so there is an easy aspect to managing them there. They deal with extreme events like major snowstorms, etc., much better, and they don't use nearly as much water as cattle, and they use it in different ways. Their behaviors are different. So those are just some examples of some of the production parts to it, but we also need to realize that producing protein on the landscape is likely to be very important to our region because of our seeing the conditions like we've seen this past summer that are so hot and dry that these animals do better under those conditions. And really our crop production systems are starting to fail because of those conditions. So we need to think about what the alternatives might be. The other aspect, of course, is the wonderful pride that comes, the cultural pride, etc., that comes from our native folks, and utilizing bison as central to their food system is a really important aspect of what we want to talk about. So part of our effort is focused on training the new rangeland managers, and what will they look like, and how will they draw on different forms of knowledge to accomplish this. So we'll talk about it as well. So anyway, looking forward to meeting all of you, and this will be a fun course, and we'll be outside, and we'll be discussing with a couple of different bison managers how they go about it, and looking forward to seeing you there. See ya. Bye.